Napoleon during the Revolution, Napoleon as emperor, and Napoleon as emperor and general towards the end of his reign. Go ahead, Dargy. All right. We are going to start the lecture with something that is not in the book at this point. It will come up later, but we're going to skip it then. We're doing it now because it makes more sense to do it now. At the time, at the time that Napoleon takes the throne of France, or becomes de facto leader of France, there are some territories that are causing problems for France. A territory by the name of San Domingue, you would know it as the Dominican Republic. See the island? Does it look familiar? Yeah. Today this would be Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Okay, San Domingue is a French territory in the Caribbean. It's one of the territories that they got to keep after the French and Indian War. There is a slave rebellion going on there. It began in 1791. So it began after the French Revolution began, and in the same year that we finally get a constitution. So now we have what government in France in 1791?
Legislative Assembly.
The Legislative Assembly has been created. Are they an efficient body?
No.
Do they govern particularly well?
No.
So badly, in fact, that the people of Paris are going to attempt to attack the king and force them to change the government. So when a rebellion begins in a distant overseas colony, the Legislative Assembly is not exactly going to leap into action. Great Britain and Spain, however, will leap into action. They are going to invade the island to stop the rebellion, and in hopes of taking the island, because France is clearly in no position to defend her property. In France, they issue this order. Free men of color. They free the men of color in San Domingue in hopes of gaining their support to turn around and fight the French. No. The French free the men of color in hopes of gaining their support in fighting the British and Spanish. Okay, so this whole thing starts when the slaves, who are men of color, rebel. France has no ability to stop the rebellion. Spain and Britain invade. So France says, fine, we'll stop the rebellion, you're free. Now help us fight these invading foreign armies. Doesn't happen. And the rebellion continues. Because they don't just want to be free, they want to be free and independent. So France in 1792 sends troops. The troops from France who arrive in San Domingue now face three enemies. The British, the Spanish, and the slaves. How do they do? Yeah, they don't. They don't. So, this man emerges. His name is Toussaint L'Ouverture. You need to know him. And remember, last name is fine. Toussaint L'Ouverture.
Sounds like croissant.
He is on the side of the French, and he promises any slaves freedom if they will fight on the side of the French against Spain and Great Britain. But wait, you say. The slaves are already free. Well, yes, if they were still controlled by the French, they would be. But who controls most of this island now? Spain and Britain. And they don't have any problem with slavery. So the slaves are still slaves, they're just not French slaves, they're Spanish and British slaves. So Toussaint Louverture steps up and says, slaves, if you'll help us get rid of the Spanish and the British, you'll get to be free. And so what happens? They fight for them. Why?
Because they want their independence. Because it's better to be free and not independent than.
Because it's better to be free and not independent than it is to be enslaved by somebody else. This dude is at least speaking their language, and he is
African American.
African. He's not African American on San Domingue, but yeah, he's black. He looks like them. Okay, so he allies with the French and he leads this army. He's going to defeat the French planters. He will defeat the British and eventually even the Spanish. Now notice I said he defeated the French planters. He allied with the French to get them to quit fighting him. Then he turned against them and picked off his enemies one by one. So in 1801, he makes himself a new constitution and declares San Domingue independent. They swear allegiance to France, but in the Constitution say France has no business messing around with us. Jean-Jacques Dessalines emerges as a leader on the other side of the island. He rebels against Louverture and creates an independent nation on the other side. On San Domingue's side, Toussaint Louverture is made governor for life. So he does not establish a democracy. But he does abolish slavery, makes Christianity the state religion.
Who does this?
Toussaint Louverture on his side. Dessalines will be a military dictator on his side. Okay. I tell you this about San Domingue and Haiti because it's going to be an issue for Napoleon. Okay? And if you don't know what had happened, you won't know why Napoleon's getting involved there. Okay? By the time we're done, you may still not really know why Napoleon got involved there based on how this went, but at least you know. Okay, Napoleon. He's born in Corsica.
Do you have to know that?
He's not actually French. Now, Corsica is a French possession. Corsica. Picture the European map. Zoom in on France. See where Monaco is?
Yeah.
See where the French Riviera is?
Yep.
What sea is to the east there? Tyrrhenian Sea. In the Tyrrhenian Sea, there are several islands that are off of the thigh of Italy. That top island, Corsica. So it's convenient that it is a French possession. So he's born in Corsica. The French view Corsicans as, meh. They're not French. They're less than us. They're not worthy. Okay. He is sent to France at age 9 to get an education. Here's Corsica. Okay. He's sent to France at age 9 to get an education. He ends up at the École Militaire in Paris, the military school. Today in Paris, this is the Eiffel Tower. It's at the end of the Champ de Mars. It is the oldest military school in France, and it's still in operation. He finishes military school at 16 and joins the artillery. What's the artillery? cannons, mortars.
It's a mortar.
A cannon that fires more up in the air and
Oh.
comes down, whereas cannons fire for distance. Okay. Joins the artillery. Remember that France went to war with Austria and Britain and
Russia.
yeah, against the coalition. Okay. Well, Napoleon gets his first military victory at Toulon. Okay. He recaptured this city. It's a city in France. He recaptures it from the British and the Royalists. Now, the whole reason he was in charge of the army capturing Toulon is because he is personal friends with Robespierre. Have you ever heard the phrase, it's not what you know, it's it's an old truism. Okay. He is promoted from captain to major to colonel to brigadier general. Prior to the French Revolution, that never would have happened. He could not have gotten to the rank of general because you had to purchase any rank above major. How good is your army going to be if you cannot be promoted on ability, but you are promoted on ability to pay? Yeah.
Wait, it's after major.
You don't have to know
Oh,
all of the. That's. I'm just giving you the process.
Just
Okay.
it's promoted.
All right. So under the Ancien regime, he never would have become a captain or a general. Sorry. Okay. Now, after Robespierre's execution, Napoleon is arrested as a terrorist. Why would he be arrested as a terrorist?
Because he's an artillery.
What period of French history did Robespierre oversee?
Reign of Terror.
The Reign of Terror. And the Reign of Terror was inflicted upon the nation of France by the people of France. What is a terrorist? Someone who incites terror and fear in the people. What had Napoleon done in France? He had defended the Legislative Assembly against the mob that attacked the Tuileries, right, the whip of grape shot. He was a personal friend of Robespierre, the architect of the terror. Was Napoleon a terrorist, one who participated in the terror?
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, origin of the word.
What?
No, origin of the word, terrorist, comes from the French Revolution and the terror. Okay.
That's on recording.
Another friend of his, one of the three directors, okay, gets him released from jail, saves him from the charges, sends him back to the military. Okay. He is there for the whiff of grape shot to defend the convention. He saves the convention. In thanks for saving the convention, they send him off to Italy to fight the coalition. He has tremendous victories in Italy. In fact, he is so successful in Italy that Austria goes, Uncle, they're out. They withdraw from the coalition. One less enemy for France to be fighting. Napoleon is a French hero. This is when he fired the grape shot out of the cannon. Grape shot is basically, you know what a shotgun shell does?
Yeah.
It has all of that little BB kind of stuff that scatters. Well, in a cannon, you guys think of cannonball.
Yeah.
There's three kinds of shot you can fire out of a cannon. You can fire the cannonball, which will either bash or explode upon impact. You can fire what's called chain shot, which is what you would fire in naval battles. Chain shot is 2 smaller balls attached by
Not trained.
a chain. And so when it comes out of the cannon, it goes, because the cannon balls on the end are big in mass, okay, and they spin. And so when you fire that in ship-to-ship combat, what are you firing it at? The sails and the rigging and stuff. You want to take down their ability to move so that you can just park beside them and pummel them to death until they give up and let you take the ship. The third kind of shot that you can load in a cannon is called grape shot. And it's basically throw all kinds of nasty, loose little pieces of shrapnel in there. Broken pieces of silverware, nails, thumbtacks. I mean, they didn't have thumbtacks, but whatever little shrapnel kinds of nastiness you have, put some packing in front of it to make sure that it builds up pressure and fire it. Fantastic against crowds on feet.
Oh.
So he was defending them too.
He was defending the convention.
Oh.
This is 10 August.
This is done.
Yes. Okay. That shrapnel stuff is called grape shot because generally you want the shrapnel to be roughly the size of a grape. And so it looks like a bunch of grapes. Yes. All right. So his victories in Italy get him further promoted. Napoleon now is making decisions for himself, and he decides he's going to go after Britain. But nobody can attack Britain directly. He wants to interrupt British trade with India, which is the most important British colony there is. So how could Napoleon, in say 1800, interrupt trade with India? Cut off their trade route to India. Where would you go to do that? What? Egypt. You go to where the shortest route is, because the British could sail all the way down around Africa and up. But the British, because they control the Mediterranean and they control the Indian Ocean, what they do is they go down to Egypt and they walk across a little piece of land, and then they sail down the Red Sea and over to India. So Napoleon says, well, if I control that, then they've either got to sail all the way around or they've got to go across rougher, nastier desert. So he goes to Egypt and he invades. He has good successes there on the land. He is controlling Egypt. Okay? The old story goes, and it's not true, but the old story goes that the Sphinx, you guys seen the Sphinx by the pyramids? It has no nose.
Oh yeah.
The story goes that Napoleon had his cannoneers practicing marksmanship and shot the nose off. Not true, the nose just erosion and deterioration, yeah. But fun story. Helps you remember that Napoleon was in Egypt, right? Napoleon says, okay, I'm going to attack Syria. I want to capture Syria. Syria was a big empire at this point. Okay? So he goes east. He still only has the original army that he went down there with. The British are now ticked and they're invading. The Turks are not happy and they're coming down. And the Syrians have a massive army. Napoleon gets really, really bogged down. He gets into bad shape in Egypt. And he is going to end up losing his shirt.
Guess what?
He's going to lose his shirt. He's going to lose his army.
Oh.
Okay? And it happens this way. How's Napoleon feeding his army? It's not off of the bounty of the Egyptian desert. He's feeding his army from supply ships that sail across the Mediterranean from France. Who has the strongest navy in the world?
Britain.
Britain. Who doesn't have the strongest navy in the world?
France.
France. A British admiral by the name of Horatio Nelson. Horatio Nelson. I hope I have a slide of him. I do not. What? Why did I go backwards? Horatio Nelson attacks Napoleon's fleet in the Mediterranean and pretty much destroys them.
British.
Napoleon has no flow of supplies. So Napoleon now faces superior numbers. He faces superior numbers. He is forced to pull out of Egypt and returns to France in 1799, 10 years after the start of the revolution. It's a date you need to know. Napoleon goes back to France in 1799. Now, Napoleon got his hiney kicked in Egypt. 1799. 89 was the start of the French Revolution. He gets his hiney kicked in Egypt. He had been a hero of France. So when he returns, does he return in shame? No, he doesn't. He conceals from the people of France his tragic defeat. How does he do this?
Spies.
Spies and allies in the press. He pays people off, basically, to not talk about what happened. He would not have been such a hero. Elena, you looked shocked. Did you think political corruption was a new thing?
No.
I can't believe it. On 18 Brumaire, remember we have that weirdo French Revolution calendar where the months are odd and named after...
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so on 18 Brumaire, Napoleon has arranged with the directors to stage a coup. What is a coup?
COO.
No. I'm going to put it on the board for you. A coup, this will blow your mind. It's kind of like a core. A coup is spelled C-O-U-P. Okay? This is pronounced coup, as in baby coup.
Yeah.
It is not pronounced coop, which is where chickens live. Okay. Coup, C-O-U-P. Do not say coop.
What is a coup?
I will smack you with a wet noodle the same way I would if you called it Versailles. A coup is a forceful overthrow of government by military means. So Napoleon uses the strength of the army behind him to overthrow the directorate and seize power.
Overthrow
The government.
by military.
Now, Napoleon's friend, who was the director, is a name you should recognize. Sieyès, the clergyman who had been elected as a member of the Third Estate and pretty much stirred all of this up. Wrote the tennis court oath. Yeah. So he's stuck around through all of this. He is one of the three directors. He's Napoleon's buddy. They're the ones who cook up the coup. Napoleon overthrows the government and he is named temporary consul. Consul is his title. And here he is. Doesn't he look lovely?
Wait, is this Napoleon?
This is Napoleon at the time that he is named temporary consul. Look how young he is.
Why is his hand in the shirt?
Why is his hand in his shirt? There are a lot of speculations about that. Some say he had perpetual indigestion. Some say he had circulatory problems and his hand was always cold and he would tuck it in his shirt to keep it warm. Some say that he had ulcers. Some say he had stomach cancer. It's all speculation. We don't know. The best guess we have is that Napoleon did it to draw attention to himself. It was unique. Nobody else did that at the time. Yes?
Did you say that they called Sayez or something a certain name also? How they called?
He was one of the directors. The directory
But
had
they
the
didn't
3
call him
directors.
anything.
No. Okay. So, as temporary consul, Napoleon is basically in sole charge of the nation of France.
Yay, good idea.
Irony? 10 years after the French Revolution, 5 years after they abolished the monarchy and beheaded the king, we are back to one guy in charge. Where else did we see this happen? What? Jimmy.
Oh, England.
In England. Yes. From Charles I to Oliver Cromwell. Huh. Okay. Now, Napoleon, early on in his rule of France, makes some reforms, and good ones. Good reforms. He writes a new constitution for France that provides for some really good stuff. We're going to take these one at a time. This new constitution for France provides for universal male suffrage. All men must suffer.
What?
Universal male suffrage. All men must suffer, right? No? What? Oh, all men get the right to vote. Right. I forget. Ladies, how many of you would like to see all men suffer? Well, that's pretty much up to you. And in general, fellas, I hate to break it to you, you will. At the hands of women, generally. All right, so universal male suffrage, what's different here? Universal means all. Yeah, you don't have to own property. Exactly, Emma. Bicameral legislature. Bi means two. So, 2 houses. Like the House of Lords and the House of Commons, or like the Senate and the House of Representatives. He has an example to follow. Just barely. We just ratified our Constitution in 1789 in the United States. The same time their revolution was starting off. Indirect election. We're going to elect some folks who will make the final decision on our behalf. And he puts all of this to a plebiscite. What is a plebiscite? If you didn't read, you will have no clue. It is a popular vote. The people get to say thumbs up or thumbs down. Now, the interesting thing about Napoleon and how he uses this plebiscite, he's crafty. He makes the changes, he implements them, he makes people live with them, and then he says, okay, now vote. Well, once you've already made the change and gotten adjusted to it, in general, people are pretty consistent in that they don't want to change again. And as long as there are actual improvements, the plebiscite goes through. Napoleon will do this when he names himself emperor as well. Names himself emperor. Other people in Europe, other crowned heads in Europe cry foul, and he says, all right, well, let's let the people decide. After he's been emperor for a while, he puts it to a plebiscite. The people are like, yeah, life is good. We got food on the table. Got a roof over my head. Yeah, it's all good. Let him be emperor. What people didn't like about the monarchy was the unfairness. And Napoleon worked very hard to be fair and to maintain some of those changes, like the elimination of the class system that the revolution had done. So people didn't care whether they're totally governed by a dictator, a king, an emperor, a democracy, so long as their day-to-day lives are better. Okay. Now Napoleon is not happy with being temporary consul. That sounds like something you could lose any minute, right? Temporary consul. No, I want some permanency in my life. So he goes to the legislature in 1802 and says, make me consul for life. And the legislature says, no!
Did he name himself first consul too?
They say, no, we will not do that. In 1804, things have gotten better in France. And yet there's a little bit of political instability. It looks like they could be sliding back into kind of a revolutionary period. So Napoleon doesn't go to the whole legislature. He works behind the scenes like he did to prearrange the coup. He works with the Council of State, which is kind of like the cabinet. Okay? And he gets them to offer him the title of consul for life. He graciously accepts, and then they ratify it with the plebiscite after the fact. Once Napoleon is given the title consul for life, he abolishes the republic. We have had a republic since the National Convention. The Directory was a republic. Even this government has been a republic. Now Napoleon becomes consul for life. Boom! No republic. What have we got? Monarchy again. Because he makes it hereditary. He declares, my son will be the next consul for life. And ratifies that with a plebiscite. And then Napoleon is going to do an astounding thing. He crowns himself emperor. Who crowned kings and emperors? The Pope. Napoleon gets the Pope to come to France to carry out the crowning ceremony. Works like this. The Pope lifts the crown to the sky to receive the blessing of God. And then he's going to lower it onto the kneeling Napoleon in front of him. Pope lifts the crown to the sky. Napoleon stands up, takes the crown from the Pope, and puts it on his own head. He then turns and crowns his wife, Josephine, Empress. What statement did Napoleon make by crowning himself?
No one can crown me.
I do not need the blessing of man nor God.
That's horrible.
This power is solely based with me. So we have moved beyond divine right now, huh? For the Pope's part, how's he feel about this situation?
He's like, what?
Oh, no, you didn't. Right? Oh, no, you didn't just destroy a centuries-old tradition. Oh, no, you didn't just disrespect the office of the Pope. Oh, no, you didn't just disrespect God Almighty. And on a personal level, oh, no, you didn't just drag me on a months-long journey across Europe so that you could embarrass me publicly in front of the world. Napoleon is not going to have great relations with the papacy for the rest of his life. Pope will not be a Napoleonic fan. You just don't do that. Okay? All right. This is a painting that hangs in the Palace of Versailles. This is Napoleon. He's already crowned himself. He's crowning his wife, Josephine. This guy, Pope, sitting there looking a little dejected, a little ticked off. Going through his mind has got to be, oh my gosh, how do I spin this? Now every king's going to think he can crown himself. I got to fix this. This is not cool. He's got a major public relations problem. You need to know this date, 1804. 15 years after the start of the French Revolution, which culminates in the abolition of the monarchy, we now have a monarch by a different name. An emperor is still a monarch. Call him emperor, call him king, same diff. Okay. Now Napoleon is going to reorganize France. He abolishes the estates, both the first, second, third estate, but he also abolishes estates in terms of breaks up the land. Nobles can't have their vast land holdings anymore. He centralizes tax collection and makes it very efficient. Tax collection is the same everywhere you are in France. It is standardized. What is the benefit to having standardized, efficient tax collection? It's harder to evade the taxation. It's going to produce more revenue for the government. And if you think a system is inherently unfair, what are you more likely to do? You're going to circumvent the system. You're going to evade it. You're going to find a way around it to benefit yourself. So if you think the taxation system is corrupt and unfair, you're less likely to pay. If you think that it is fair and it is being equally applied, you are far more likely to pay your share. Tax revenues go up massively when Napoleon implements this reform. So now he is a military-minded man in complete control of his country, and he has money in his coffers. Napoleon replaces locally elected officials with prefects whom he appoints. This is very much like the intendant of Louis XIII. Who are the prefects loyal to? Napoleon, the source of their power. Who were the locally elected officials loyal to? The people. They would cover stuff up. They would hide things. Right? A prefect is going to report everything. Right? You guys are my children. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to leave you home alone. Who would you like to be in charge? Jamie? What? Jake? Dylan? Who do you three want to be in charge of you while I'm gone? What? No, it has to be one of you.
Oh.
You guys have to choose one of you to be in charge. Dylan gets to be in charge. Okay. I come home, Dylan's been in charge. They threw a massive house party, by the way. Put a hole in Jake's waterbed. Okay. How'd things go, son?
They're good.
They were good? No problems?
No.
No issues at all?
No.
Okay. Alright. Well, eventually, when the floor rots out and Jake's waterbed drops into the middle of the kitchen, I discover that perhaps allowing them to select their own leader was a poor idea. I have to go out of town on a business trip again. Jamie, you're in charge. If things go well, when I get back, you're going to be rewarded. I go out of town. Another massive house party. Jamie calls the cops. They come, they break up the party. I come back home. How'd things go? Jamie says,
Dylan did it.
Dylan did it. Jake invited the whole swim team over. It was a mess. I'm like, thank you. Thank you for letting me know that, Jamie. Good job. Way to be responsible. Here's the keys to your brand new car. Okay. Jamie is my prefect. She's loyal to me.
Snitches.
You know what? As the emperor of that house, do I care about snitches? No, I care about the integrity of the house, the peace of the nation. Dylan.
Did you take attendance?
I did take attendance. Thank you for checking.
First over.
The Napoleonic Code. No, I didn't, but I did.
Dylan.
The Napoleonic Code is an entire reform of the legal system of France. New civil code, new criminal code, everything rewritten. It is still the primary basis of the French legal system. Napoleon rewrites almost all of it himself. He doesn't delegate that. What? What don't you know?
What did he rewrite?
The legal code, the laws, the civil code and the criminal code. Do you know the difference between civil and criminal?
Yes. I feel like you're gonna tell us.
Yes, no. Well, if you know, then I won't tell you.
Tell us.
Okay. The criminal code is when you do something illegal. Right? The civil code is the law that governs contracts and agreements and stuff. Okay? So if I rob Lance, I steal his very valuable first edition of the Gutenberg Bible, I have broken the criminal code. If in the process of stealing his first edition Gutenberg World History text, I also punch Lance repeatedly and leave him crippled for life, I have violated the civil code. If I enter into a transaction to purchase some land from Laura, and then once I've got the title to the land, I only pay her half as much as I agreed, is that theft? It is not, but it is a violation of the civil code. I broke our contract. Okay? So there are two different legal systems that operate. It's why if you get into a car accident and you're drunk, you're going to face criminal charges for driving impaired. But the person can also sue you in civil court for damages for their pain and suffering and that kind of stuff. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Like in the courts, how does that work when they're like, I sue you for like $5,000 or like $1,000 for my pain and suffering? Like, how does that work? Is like, why are you getting money if you broke your heart, would you sue for like pain and suffering? Like,
Okay, so pain and suffering usually is only accompanied by actual injury. Okay, so I got rear-ended 2 years ago in April, and the other person's car insurance paid for my physical therapy treatments and the emergency room visit and all of that kind of stuff. Okay. We made a settlement with the insurance company that included some money above and beyond those costs to compensate for my wasted time, the months of discomfort that I had, that pain and suffering. Had they not done anything more than just pay for the medical bills, then I could have chosen to go to civil court and sue for some funds beyond that to compensate me for my owies. Okay. And it's because, the amounts vary because it depends on how well you tell your story. I was so miserable that I couldn't grade my finals and I lost my job. Well, I'm going to get a much bigger settlement for that
Wait,
than,
is this real?
ow, my big toe really hurt because I stomped on the floor of the car when she hit us. Right? No, I didn't lose my job.
No.
Did I get hit? Yes.
That's what I
Yeah. They actually even had to compensate us. We were on our way to the furniture mart. Our fridge had died. Sunday afternoon, we've got about 45 minutes to get down there and get a fridge and get home. Okay? Get rear-ended trying to turn left off of 72nd Street into the furniture mart. Never got our fridge. So it was 2 more days before we could get down there to get a fridge. They had to compensate us for the value of all of the food in our fridge and freezer too.
Nice. Nice.
Do you guys stock up that night too?
No. All right, so what changes? Okay, we're going to stop here. We'll start with what changes the Napoleonic Code makes, and then we're going to fight some war, and you're going to learn about the 1812 Overture and how it tells the story of Napoleon's invasion of Russia.
Awesome.